We will be exploring the top 10 most incredible miracles performed by Moses, each showcasing the undeniable power of God and his divine intervention in the lives of the Israelites. From the parting of the Red Sea to the plagues of Egypt, these miraculous events were instrumental in leading God's people toward their destiny. Additionally, we will delve into one particular miracle, an act of disobedience by Moses, that ultimately cost him the opportunity to enter the Promised Land. Despite his unwavering dedication and leadership over the Israelites for 40 years, a single moment of disobedience altered the course of his journey. Join us as we uncover these powerful events, their significance, and the lessons they hold for us today. Number 1, the staff becomes a serpent. Moses stood before Pharaoh, his heart steady with faith. At God's command, he threw down his staff, and before Pharaoh's eyes, it transformed into a writhing serpent. The Egyptian magicians mimicked the act, casting down their own staffs, which also turned into serpents. But in a dramatic display of divine power, Moses' serpent swallowed theirs whole. Pharaoh and his court gasped, yet his heart remained hardened. This miracle was a warning. God's power reigned supreme over Egypt. Despite witnessing this event, Pharaoh refused to release the Israelites, setting the stage for even greater wonders to come. The tension in Egypt grew as Moses stood firm in his divine mission. Number 2, the parting of the Red Sea. With Pharaoh's army closing in, the Israelites stood trapped between their enemies and the vast Red Sea. Terror filled their hearts as they saw the chariots approaching. Moses, unwavering in faith, lifted his staff high, and a mighty wind tore through the sea, dividing the waters and creating a dry path. The Israelites, hesitant at first, crossed through the towering walls of water. As the last of them reached the shore, Pharaoh's army charged in pursuit. At God's command, Moses stretched his hand once more, and the sea came crashing down, drowning the entire army. The people of Israel stood in awe at the shoreline, realizing they had been truly delivered by the hand of God. Number 3, water from the rock. As the Israelites journeyed through the barren wilderness, they grew desperate for water. Their throats were dry, and their cries of thirst turned into complaints against Moses. "Why have you brought us here to die?" they lamented. Seeking guidance, Moses turned to God. In response, God instructed him to take his staff and strike a specific rock. As Moses obeyed, a miraculous stream of fresh water gushed forth, providing enough for all. The people rejoiced, but Moses knew this was more than just a drink, it was a lesson in trust. God would provide for them in the most impossible situations if only they remained faithful. Number 4, victory through raised hands. The Amalekites attacked Israel, seeking to destroy them. As the battle raged, Moses climbed to a nearby hill, raising his staff high above his head. As long as his arms remained lifted, the Israelites triumphed, but whenever he grew weary and lowered them, the enemy gained ground. Seeing his exhaustion, Aaron and Hur rushed to his side. They held up his arms until sunset, ensuring victory. The exhausted Moses watched as the Amalekites retreated. This miracle was a powerful reminder that their strength came not from their own might, but from God's power and the unity of his people. Number 5, the earth swallows Korah's rebellion. Korah, along with 250 men, rose up against Moses, claiming he had taken too much power for himself. Moses, deeply troubled, fell on his face before God. He declared that if these men were wrong, the earth itself would open up and swallow them. As soon as he finished speaking, the ground beneath them split apart, and they were swallowed alive, vanishing into the earth. Fire then consumed the rest of the rebels, leaving the people of Israel in shock and fear. This miracle reaffirmed Moses' divine appointment and silenced any who dared question God's chosen leader. Number 6, the plague of fiery serpents and the bronze serpent. The Israelites, weary from their journey, once again complained against God and Moses. In response, God sent venomous serpents among them, and many were bitten and died. The people, recognizing their sin, begged Moses to intercede. God instructed Moses to craft a bronze serpent and lift it high on a pole. Those who gazed upon it in faith were miraculously healed. This event foreshadowed the ultimate salvation that would come through faith, a reminder that obedience to God's commands brings life. Number 7. The burning bush. Before his mission began, Moses wandered the wilderness tending his flock. One day, he saw a bush engulfed in flames but not consumed. As he approached, God spoke from within the fire, calling him by name. "Remove your sandals, for the place where you stand is holy ground," God said. He then commanded Moses to return to Egypt and demand Pharaoh release his people. Though afraid, Moses accepted his calling. The burning bush was a symbol, God's presence was with him, and his power would guide him through the trials ahead. Number 8. The 10 Plagues of Egypt. Pharaoh's refusal to free the Israelites led to a series of devastating plagues. The Nile turned to blood, frogs overran the land, gnats and flies tormented the people, livestock perished, boils afflicted their skin, hailstorms destroyed crops, locusts devoured what remained, darkness shrouded the land, and finally, the firstborn of every Egyptian household perished. Only after this final, heartbreaking plague did Pharaoh relent, allowing the Israelites to leave. The plagues demonstrated God's power over Egypt's false gods and the consequences of resisting his will. Number 9. Moses sees the back of God. Moses longed to witness the fullness of God's glory. On Mount Sinai, he pleaded with God for a glimpse of his divine presence. God agreed but warned that no man could see his face and live. Instead, God placed Moses in the cleft of a rock, covering him with his hand as he passed by. As he removed his hand, Moses beheld only God's back. Even this limited encounter left Moses' face shining so brightly that the Israelites feared to look at him. This experience deepened his connection with the Almighty. Number 10. Manna and quail from heaven. As the Israelites wandered through the desert, hunger gnawed at them. They grumbled against Moses, longing for the food of Egypt. In response, God rained down manna from heaven, a sweet, nourishing bread that appeared like dew each morning. When they desired meat, he sent quail in abundance, covering the ground. Each day, they gathered just enough to sustain them, learning to rely on God's provision. The manna was a testament to God's care, a daily miracle reminding them that He alone was their sustainer and provider. And finally the miracle that denied Moses into the promised land. As the Israelites journeyed through the wilderness of Zin, they faced yet another trial. There was no water. Frustration and fear gripped the people, and they turned against Moses and Aaron, demanding to know why they had been brought to such a barren land. In their desperation, they cried out, blaming their leaders for their suffering. Moses and Aaron, overwhelmed by the complaints, sought the Lord's guidance. God spoke to them, instructing Moses to take his staff, gather the people, and speak to a specific rock. Water would then flow forth, providing for the Israelites. Returning to the crowd, Moses, worn down by years of leading a stubborn people, let his anger get the best of him. Instead of speaking to the rock as commanded, he struck it twice with his staff. Miraculously, water gushed out, satisfying the Israelites. Yet, despite the success of the miracle, Moses had disobeyed God's direct instruction. Soon after, God called Moses and Aaron before him. He rebuked them, saying, "Because you did not trust me enough to honor me as holy before the Israelites, you will not lead them into the promised land." Though Moses had been a faithful servant, his disobedience had grave consequences. While the Israelites would enter the land flowing with milk and honey, Moses would only see it from a distance. This moment was a lesson in faith and obedience. Though miracles are powerful, they must be accompanied by complete trust in God's word. Moses' journey was coming to an end, and Joshua would soon take up the mantle of leadership. The promised land was near, but Moses would not step foot in it.